Buckingham is a group that originally was organized around concerns for the pipeline, the compressor station. I don't think that's a secret to anybody here, no matter where you're standing on that now. But we're also very devoted to sustainable development, to saving our history, our resources, water, air, and moving forward in an economically sustainable way. So one of the things that we did, and I'm not going to get into it too much because Divya really took this on, Heidi Divya, in a very big way. She went to each home to do the baseline testing herself. And she's crunched the numbers, and she's got the help of an expert who you'll be hearing from here to do this baseline testing, because we were very concerned that we needed to have a really good, accurate information on our water, also our air, before anything should happen to this community. The pipeline went in, the compressor station went in, because what Dominion looks at is really not the whole range of different things that could be in your water and in your air. So we wanted to have that baseline testing. So I'm going to turn this over to Jim.
Thank you, Chad, our chair. And welcome to the baseline testing wrap party, is what we're calling it, wrap-up party. And I got a little PowerPoint here together for you at the last minute. What is baseline testing exactly? It involves testing or measuring, figuring out what is the current condition of our well water, our surface water, our air, and our health. We do this because we know that fracked gas compressor stations and pipelines are extremely toxic to our environment. Thus, by recording what the conditions of our community are now, we have a baseline for which to compare. Do you want to turn off the AC back there? Would that help? No?
Speak up a little.
I can't. Unfortunately, I can't speak any louder. This is it. Thanks. Okay. So, I think I was at, by recording what the conditions of our community are now, we have a baseline for which we can compare in the event that these facilities are built. We can then do testing after construction, if that should come to pass, to show clearly how we've been impacted. Also importantly, we contribute to the growing scientific body of evidence of just how impactful this is for any community. Friends of Buckingham started this project about 3 years ago. Oops. I'm ready to switch. Yay, that's us.
That's probably 4 years ago.
We started this project about 3 years ago, and we have developed and teamed up with those who know how to do this project in a scientific and legally defensible way. So I'll be giving a brief overview of the air and health assessments and the ongoing stream monitoring. And I'll leave the well water testing project to Lisa Lefferts, who developed the protocol for that, and she'll go into that in good detail. So before maybe going much further, I'd like to thank all of those who helped make tonight happen. And I'll start by thanking Marie Flowers for organizing our fine meal, the salad and pizzas from Pino's in Dillman, and Melanie for the cake, and my husband Ray-Jean for picking up all the liquados and helping with the data entry over here. Couldn't have done it without him. And Hanuman for helping to set up everything, and Chad, and especially the tech stuff, and Mindy for helping me to create my first PowerPoint, and for some of the slides that she got from the Climate Reality Project that she just took training with in Atlanta. So thanks to the many folks that participated in the testing too, and you know who you are. In the interest of protecting your privacy, no one's names are connected with any of these studies, and of course, those who participated know that. So, we move on to the next, perhaps. This is one of the climate reality project slides, the next few slides. So we know fossil fuel compressor stations emit pollutants that are known to increase the cancer risk, the cardiovascular disease, respiratory disease, and neurological and developmental disorders. We also have found that African Americans are 3 times as likely to die from particulate air pollution as the overall population. And that's from the New England Journal of Medicine, so they're pretty credible. I think they know what they're talking about. And why that would be is because it's an environmental justice issue where, which is defined as when vulnerable communities are disproportionately affected by environmental impacts and have less ability to adapt or recover from it. So we know that these impacts are equated with climate change, and so in turn, vulnerable communities are disproportionately affected by climate change or climate crisis, what would be, I think, a better description. So the emissions, we also know, thanks to some allies doing some good work, that the emissions from the Atlantic coast and the Mountain Valley pipelines would nearly double the current emissions from all of Virginia's existing power plants and fossil fuel infrastructure.
Where do you get that information?
That's Oil Change International that did that.
What is it, the equivalent of 42 coal-fired plants?
Yeah, 46, I think.
46? It's in the 40s.
It's up there.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Let's see. So we move from the personal to the global. We get by with a lot of help from our friends, other good people who care enough to ask the questions and do the research, the work, and dare to hope for a better way. 4 and more years ago, we learned from and leaned on Damascus Citizens for Sustainability for their research and actions to protect the Delaware River watershed area from fossil fuel insults. We've also leaned on Physicians for Social Responsibility, and they just published their 6th edition of the Compendium of Scientific, Medical, and Media Findings Demonstrating Risks and Harms of Fracking. We also thank Environmental Health Project of Southwest Pennsylvania, who created the Citizen Science Toolkit, which we used for the air monitoring and for the health assessments. We consulted at length with Eric Feist. He was the director of the Madison County, New York Health Department, not Virginia. He designed and completed the first of its kind comprehensive community monitoring for a mere 12,000 horsepower compressor station. Remember, ours is up to 57,000 at this point. So he worked with Environmental Health Project to do this, and he recommended that we work with them. So, and then we also thank 2 foundations for generously donating money to purchase these various projects. And none of those are here today, so I won't name them. One of them actually prefers to remain anonymous. It's a local foundation. Okay, I think I can go on to the next. So why? Why are we doing this? What are we doing? And what are the results of it? Okay, so the ACP, the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, okay, that's not quite it. Oh, all right, oh well, okay. The Atlantic Coast Pipeline would cross the James River just upstream from Yogaville, heading east to the compressor station site at Union Hill in a predominantly African American community, most of whom are ancestors of freed slaves. This 57,000 horsepower compressor would be the largest that Dominion has ever built. The ACP and the compressor station, so the pipeline and the compressor station, are extremely concerning for many reasons. Compressor stations are nasty. They are designed to increase the pressure on the fracked gas passing through what would be for us 42-inch pipes, which would already be under very high pressure, 1,400 psi. That's a lot. Okay, so periodically, compressor stations need to release pressure when the pressure gets too high. These events are called blowdowns, which shoot particulate matter and toxic materials, including methane, into the air. These blowdowns are usually unannounced and unknown to people living in the area. Annual emissions are counted on an average basis, so there might be a blowdown one day with a high spike of emissions and very low the next day. But that's all averaged out is how the industry does it. And unfortunately also, the Department of Environmental Quality goes for those statistics too. Therefore, we have tested and recorded the quality of the local air, quite clean, as we all know. And we placed monitors in 4 homes all around the compressor station. So these were spec monitors, and they monitored PM 2.5, particulate matter, little teeny little pieces of matter, and were in place in 4 people's homes for 32 days. They also had SUMA canisters, and formaldehyde and hydrogen sulfide badges. They were just in place for 24 hours, and they measure VOCs, or volatile organic compounds. And we can get into this stuff later. But essentially, they measured 69 chemicals. So if a source of pollution is nearby, say the compressor station or whatever, these conditions could cause increased exposure for anyone nearby. Chemicals from the source may combine with the particulate matter and travel deep into the regions of our lungs to cause respiratory problems, or gain access to other parts of the body through a blood-gas exchange. Some communities who have compressor stations in place have won hard-fought agreements with the industry to be notified when blowdowns occur. Nearby residents then can choose to stay in their closed-up homes to limit exposure. But that doesn't much help domestic animals and wildlife. And, mind you, many blowdowns are not scheduled. They have to happen when they have to happen to release the pressure. Stream monitoring is next. That's also part of our project. Oops, I guess I missed that. Anyway, you saw, does anyone need an explanation of this one? So the red is the compressor station site, and you can see maybe a red circle all around, and so these are the home sites, and you can see how close they are. Unfortunately, Dominion, essentially in their study, erased all of this neighborhood. They just took a general, they used the census, they used the average for the population in the whole county, instead of actually who's living here. So that's how they got away with getting their air permit for this. Okay, let's see. And that's what the 42-inch pipes look like. That's how big they are. So we asked the local and the regional and the state health departments to do these studies, and they were not able to. So unfortunately, that's the way we're set up. You'd think, but really, what industry does this? As I said, there's only one place on the planet that has done comprehensive health testing, one public health department, and that's up in Madison County, New York. No one can, so communities have to do it themselves. The private citizens have to do this themselves. And this really should happen for any polluting industry. We already have a Superfund site in Buckingham. And who gets to pay for that? Instead of industry, it's the taxpayers, right? So we're very confused, I think. Yep, no one would help us, so we did it ourselves. But we had a lot of good help from the friends that I listed. So we also did stream monitoring. So that the Atlantic Coast Pipeline would cross, would make 37 stream crossings in Buckingham, and there would be 7 floodplains that are crossed. We got training and equipment thanks to Trout Unlimited and Appalachian Voices and CSI, which stands for Pipeline Compliance Surveillance Initiative, which is works with ABRA. Raise your hand. Virginia's an intern working with ABRA and the Compliance Surveillance Initiative this summer. So ABRA is the Allegheny Blue Ridge Alliance. Friends of Buckingham is one of about 50 member organizations. It's part of that. And they're doing an incredible job of surveilling both the Mountain Valley Pipeline and the Atlantic Coast. And so we are part of that extensive teamwork. So 9 of us got trained. So can I have a show of hands of all the folks who've gotten trained here in stream monitoring? So Hanuman, Dave, Red, Marie, Chad, Nelson, you? Did you get trained? You'd like to be trained. You can come out with me sometime if you like. I do some stream monitoring, it's fun. And nice and cool in summer, a little cold in winter. Okay, so 9 of us got trained, and we are monitoring up to 14 sites in Buckingham. Corunna Howarth has the James River at Wingina and Lotus Creek. Hanuman has Sycamore Creek, North Fork of the Ripley. That's Hanuman, and that's our equipment there. And let's see, I got ahead of myself. There's Ripley Creek, South Fork. This is the creek that comes directly from the compressor station site. The wetlands, which they denied are wetlands there, but nonetheless, we know there are wetlands on the compressor station site, and this comes directly from there. It's about a mile away from it, and that's one that I monitor. This is Matthews Creek. That's Chad. Chad and I do that one, and there's Hanuman. We're all doing pebble counts there. Some of you who've done this training know about pebble counts. Red did an amazing pebble count in a very muddy stream. Was that Willis River?
I think so.
Yeah, and he was diving for the pebbles underwater. Very dirty river. Let's see. James River. So this is what Corunna Howarth and I do. We monitor at Wingina, and then on the left is the James River. That's my faithful assistant, my late faithful assistant, Bindu, and you can see the James River is in flood. And then this is David Ball's as Horsepen Creek. I didn't get everybody's pictures. Maybe I will someday. Okay, so we also do the North River. David Ball has Horsepen Creek, North River, Slate River. Murray Flowers has the Willis River, Little Willis River, and Wiley and Mason, I think they're doing Licky Branch. What's next?
Slate.
Slate?
I thought they were doing Slate River.
No, they're doing Licky Branch. Two sites on the Licky. So we have extensive support from the water spirit world and the artists of artivism. And please join us. We are deep-hearted people. We care about all of us, and we make a difference because we team up and we speak up. A recent trip to Washington, D.C., we collaborated with the Poor People's Campaign and Reverend Barbara II and Reverend Theo Harris, who are continuing the good works of Martin Luther King, connecting the dots between systemic racism, poverty, environmental destruction, and increased militarism abroad and here at home.
John and Ella and myself were missing from that picture. We were there too.
Yes, they were over at the Capitol building, giving them their peace of mind and
Visiting our legislators.
So, let's love our mother and be aware of all of our actions and how they impact us all today. And unto the seventh generation, as the natives say, together we rise. So we can take a little break if you like, or ask questions, but Lisa's gonna come on next, and before she comes on, I would like to give an introduction. So, any questions? Is everyone hearing me? I'm trying to project. Yeah, okay. No? So, Lisa Lefferts. Lisa Lefferts lives in Nelson County, and thanks to Deborah Kushner. Everyone know Deborah? Remember Deborah? She's been busy she's been very busy elsewhere. She sent us a lifeline in the form of Lisa Lefferts. Amazing. Because, well, first of all, I'll say that she lives in Nelson County on the side of a mountain downslope from the proposed ACP. She lives in, did you say that later? No, you didn't. So she lives in an intentional eco-village. So you can imagine living in a community that you've intentionally chosen to stay away from chemicals, and the ACP wants to barrel right down the middle of it. Yeah, I mean, we all know, it's not good anywhere. So she's a public health scientist with over 30 years of experience in evaluating risks from chemicals and other food safety issues. Currently, she works as a senior scientist at the Center for Science in the Public Interest, CSPI, which is a nonprofit, independent, consumer advocacy organization based in Washington, D.C. She received her BA from Oberlin College in Biology and Environmental Studies, and a Master's of Science in Public Health from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in the Department of Environmental Science and Engineering, with a focus on toxicology. So if you're following all of that, it's very connected to this water testing. At CSPI, her focus is food additives and other chemicals added to food. Prior to CSPI, she worked as a consultant to and directly for nonprofit organizations, and also a little for state and federal government agencies. She has co-authored a book and dozens of reports and articles. And I can tell you, she's a true scientist, incredibly exacting, because we've been working closely for quite a while now. I am very pleased and proud to ask Lisa to take the floor. Hanma, you want to shut this down?
Thanks, Heidi.
Sure. I'll remove my stuff.
Well, hi, everybody.
Hello.
So I haven't prepared a PowerPoint like Heidi has, but I just thought I'd tell you how we developed this program. Feel free to interrupt me at any time if anything I'm saying doesn't make sense or you have any questions. So it was actually a little over 2 years ago that one of my neighbors sent an email around in our little community called Horizons Village in Nelson County, saying, well, the Cooperative Water Extension folks are going to be testing in our county, and I think we should get our water tested before the pipeline comes through, so that, you know, we can protect ourselves. And she said, I'm going to sign up, you know, if other people want to sign up, you know, let me know. So people started signing up, and I was looking at the testing, and it's, you know, it's good testing. It tests for, I think, something like 14 different things, cost, I think at that time, $55. But as I was thinking about it, I realized that if we wanted to protect ourselves, we really needed something a little bit more than that. So I wrote an email back and I said, you know, I've just been looking into some things and I think we can get, you know, something a little bit more comprehensive that we might need. And so, long story short, it took a long time to figure it out, but people decided not to go with that testing and to go with this other testing. So, first off, you probably know, like, water can dissolve so many things, you know. So when people say they tested their water, well, what did they test it for? There's so many things that can get into water. So in thinking about the pipeline, it's like, well, what should we test for? So some things are, you know, the pipeline might cause some changes in the soil. So things that are in the soil, you know, that sometimes are in water, it might change a bit. Also, you know, there's what the pipeline carries, which is mostly methane, but there's some other gases in there. Well, maybe that could leak out. Of course, there's construction equipment that comes in, you know, that means fuel to power the equipment. That could be gasoline, it could be diesel. Maybe they're using some degreasers, you know, so we're just trying to think about, well, what should we test for? So, but then there's also practical considerations. I mean, you can't test for everything. So, some methods that chemists use can find a lot of things. Some of them can only look at one thing. So, it's kind of trying to figure out what we should look for, and also being reasonable in terms of cost and, you know, practical stuff. So, I came up with a list, and I talked to other people who, you know, have expertise in this area, and they said, yeah, it looks like a pretty good list. And I talked to at the, for the State Office of Groundwater, he made some suggestions, and I looked at what Virginia tests when they're looking in an area, and our list is pretty comparable to their list. So we came up with the list, and as Heidi said, my friend Deborah Kushner, our mutual friend, introduced us to each other so that what we were developing for my neighborhood could, you know, be used more broadly. So, so I guess that's pretty much an explanation of how we came up with the tests.
Can I add that?
Yeah.
Lisa also looked at it and looked at other comprehensive testing, and they were so expensive. I mean, we're talking in the thousands.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, it's not just coming up with a list of chemicals. It was also like, well, what laboratory should we use? And I learned a lot doing this, because first off, I had my water tested a long time ago for, you know, I thought pretty good testing. But I learned that there's informational testing, and then there's testing that you want to hold up in court. And they're two different things. And the kind that you want to hold up in court is more expensive. And of course, different labs charge different amounts, and I learned also that it's not just what you test for, but how the water is sampled. So we wanted to make it, have somebody independent collecting the sample, and it turned out we used the laboratory that was going to do the testing. They also collected the samples. So they had custody of that sample from collection to final testing. And that's important if we ever would have to go to court. You know, I called a lot of different people who might have done the sampling, checked with a lot of different labs. You know, issues came up like, well, gee, what if Dominion uses this lab? Is that a conflict of interest? Or, you know, talked to a lawyer about that, who advised us that, you know, Dominion would have a hard time saying that this wasn't a good lab if they themselves used it. So, in fact, the lab that we used does have Dominion as a client. But the lab's job is to stand behind their results. So, and I have to say, I think the lab has done a great job. They've answered questions I've had, and I think they've been pretty good. So, so we came up with our list, and we had to negotiate a contract, and trying to make sure we thought of everything, to make sure, again, I kind of think of this like insurance. So, you know, when you buy a house, if you own your home, you know, you probably have it insured, and you don't really think that your house is ever going to burn down, you know, but it's so precious to you that you spend the money to get the insurance just in case. And that's sort of the same thing with this water testing. We don't really, you know, the pipeline might never be built. You know, hopefully it won't. And if it is built, you know, we may never have any problems with our water. But, you know, we want to make sure. And again, if there was a problem, we want to be able to prove. And as Heidi explained, this baseline testing, it's like the before picture, and then we'll have an after picture. So it's like, before the pipeline comes, we wanna know the quality of our water, and then after it comes, we can also do the testing again, and then we can compare them to see if there's any difference. So, so the testing was done. Heidi accompanied the lab in doing the samples. And I don't expect you to look, to be able to read this or anything, but just to let you know, like down this long list, those are all the chemicals that we tested for and other parameters. And then going across, and across that way are all the different sites that we sampled. 30, yeah. 15 on this page, 15 on that page. And I don't expect you to be able to read this. If you feel like looking at it in detail later, you can, but you'll notice that there's some yellow up here, a little bit of orange, and there's not really much going on down here. So the good news is, down here, these are different organic chemicals that really should not be in your drinking water. And they're not, for the most part. Almost everybody had non-detects on these organic chemicals. There were a few detections, and for the people that had those, I'm happy to discuss those in more detail, but the good news is that they were all below EPA federal drinking water standards. So some of them, like one of them that was found, here's chloroform, and then we had a tetrachloroethylene. Those are possible, one is probable and one is a possible carcinogen, so we don't really want any in there, but at least they were fairly low levels. But the not so good news is that there were some things that came up in the water testing. So this has nothing to do with pipeline, just, how good is our water? So these yellow, things that are marked in yellow are things you might want to take a look at and do something about, and the ones in orange are kind of like a little bit of a warning. So I just want to go over what the results were, and then make some recommendations, and I've got some handouts. So let me first pass these out, and Heidi has a list. We have all the results listed by number, and if you got your water tested and you want to know what your number is so you can understand the results, ask Heidi or ask me. We've got a list. But I'm going to just...
And also, everybody should have gotten a copy of the results by email or by mail.
So, so a lot of people, but not everybody. Anyway, on the handout that's coming around, I've listed which sites had which issues. So one of the issues that came up quite a lot in the water testing here were coliforms. And coliforms it's a group of bacteria, and they're not supposed to be in your well water. They often indicate that fecal waste is contaminating the water. So a lot of these bacteria won't make you sick, but some can make you sick. And they're kind of thought of as indicator bacteria. You got enough? So it's sort of, even if they're not making you sick, it's an indication that somehow they're getting into your well, and so if they're getting in, maybe some disease-causing bacteria could also get in. It's also, you're more likely to find coliform bacteria in your water after it's been raining pretty hard, and also in wells that are more shallow. So if you have coliform bacteria in your well, what I'd recommend for starters is to look at your well, because somehow surface water is getting into your well and bringing with it some bacteria. So maybe there's a crack in the cap to your well, or maybe your well is kind of is in a hole and the water's just coming in. Maybe the casing is cracked. Maybe there's a little nest of of mice living there, you know. So the first thing you could do is visually inspect it. You might want to call a well driller and have them take a look. This happened to my neighbor just like a few weeks ago. And she called a well driller. They had to put a camera or something down the well, figured out that the casing was cracked. They put a new casing in. She got alerted to this because her water got, it got a funny color and a funny smell, so she was concerned. Now, this testing was done a while ago, but I don't know if you still have this problem or not, but I think it's worth taking a look at. And I have, on this handout that I just sent around, there's some links for more information about it. But anyway, this is an indication that something's happening that shouldn't be happening. The second thing I've listed is E. coli, and that's something that's more serious. That's a disease-causing bacteria that's found in human and animal fecal waste. So you should not be drinking water that's contaminated with E. coli because it can make you sick. Like it can cause diarrhea and gastrointestinal upset. So it's sort of the same advice as for coliforms, only hepped up a little bit because it's more serious because those can cause disease. And there was 8 people that tested positive for E. coli. Again, that's something of concern. Now, I don't know, Heidi, when you all were doing the sampling, if it had just rained a lot or not? No. Okay, well that kind of worries me then, because you wouldn't want to keep drinking water with E. coli in it. It'll make you sick. What you could do is, after you've taken a look at your well and tried to solve any problems, you could retest your water. And I've got another handout here that we were given about testing by the extension office. I think it's $60 for about 14 different contaminants. And it's coming up in September, and I'd really suggest that you after you try to solve however the water's getting into your well, that you retest it, just to, for your health. Maybe you could pass those around to anybody that would like it. The other big issue with the water that affected almost everybody was that the water was very acidic and it had low alkalinity. What that means is that it's corrosive. Now here's what I'm worried about. So when the water was sampled, it was sampled from the outside spigot before it went into the house. And we did that on purpose. We wanted it to be, not having anything interfering from the house. But when that corrosive water enters into your plumbing system, it could leach lead or copper from your pipes if you have copper pipes with lead solder, or hopefully not lead pipes. So I'm very concerned about that corrosive water entering the house. Maybe some of you already have some kind of neutralizer treatment. You might be getting pinhole leaks in your plumbing. What I would recommend is, again, that you might want to test your water at the tap where you drink it, like say at the kitchen faucet. Sample it there and get it retested by the extension folks that are going to be testing in Buckingham in September. That's that handout that's just gone around.
So Lisa, what about those strips, that are really cheap? You can just get them from the hardware store. Are they good enough?
I think those test for lead. They're not going to test for bacteria or copper.
Oh, for pH, the pH strips?
Yeah, well, we already know you got acidic water.
Oh, I thought you were.
So we know the water's acidic.
Okay.
It's just, what is it leaching out
Okay.
when it goes through the pipes? It could be leaching out lead, and lead is a very, very toxic metal. There's no safe level of lead. It's especially bad for pregnant women and infants, but it's also bad for everybody. But it's just especially bad for them. It affects the developing brain. So anyway, I'm worried about that acidic water, and what it's doing. So I'd really recommend that you consider retesting at the kitchen faucet, make sure you don't have a problem with lead or copper. And I'd also suggest that you look into somehow getting a neutralizer, and I think I put some information in there about that. I don't think it's very expensive to get a neutralizer, but some of the water, the recommendation is that water be no less than 6.5 pH, and we've got some in the 4s and 5s, so that's really, really acidic. So that's my biggest take-home message. The other thing I wanted to mention, there were a couple results that affected just a few folks. There were 2 sites that had one had very high nitrate levels, over the drinking water standard. So I should just mention that the EPA federal drinking water standards, they don't, they're for public water systems, not for your private wells. But they're good reference points to look at to see, if something's a problem or not. So they're not enforceable for your own private well, but they're just helpful. So one of the levels was exceeding the federal drinking water standard for nitrate, which is a real concern if there's any infants or pregnant women in the home. So I think I'll be in touch with those people at those sites about that, in case they're not here. And then there were a few other results that I've listed on the handout here. Turbidity was a problem in mainly in 3 sites, but a few others had slightly more turbidity than ideal. Turbidity is just like, is it cloudy? So you might have noticed, those of you who scored high on the turbidity, that the water is a little bit cloudy. Now that's not a problem in and of itself, it's particles and stuff in the water, but sometimes those particles can feed bacteria or provide a little shelter for the bacteria. So we like to, we don't like the water to be turbid. So you could consider a sediment filter. I just bought a sediment filter for my water. I was tired of having it clog up the screen in my little kitchen faucet, so I got a sediment filter, and I'm happy to share more information about the one I got. Also, I don't know if anybody here is on a sodium-restricted diet or has someone in their house who restricts their sodium intake, but there were a few sites, well, mainly one, but there was a few others that had kind of borderline levels of sodium. So I just wanted to highlight that, and on the handout there's where you can go for a little more information about that. The water probably isn't providing nearly as much as the diet, but for somebody who's got a hypertension problem, high blood pressure, and they're trying to watch their sodium, that could be important. And some of the other results are are not really health issues, but they're kind of nuisance problems. Iron and manganese, and I have some handouts about iron and manganese, but they'll stain your sink and tub. One person had slightly high fluoride, which would be a problem. It causes teeth mottling in kids. So those are the main results, but I also wanted to mention a few other results that I thought were interesting. So methane. So pipeline is carrying mostly methane. That's what natural gas is. But methane can also occur, in a swampy area. It can be naturally occurring as well. So there were 3 sites that did have methane in the water. They were low levels, and methane itself is not toxic, but if it builds up to a high enough level, it can be flammable or even explosive. So at the levels that were found, with all of this stuff, I was trying to look at, well, how high are these levels? Are they bad? And I didn't know about methane, but I looked up and found out that the US Department of the Interior has some guidance that a number of states are using. And it said that, it says, you know, how high the levels have to be a problem. That even at low levels, like the ones found at 3 sites here, they recommend that, it says any water well with a detectable concentration of methane should be routinely tested to ensure that the methane concentration is not increasing to a dangerous level. So I wanted to pass that on for those 3 sites, 18, 20, and 29. And if it does start to build up, you can add a vent to your well cap to vent it. And then again, the other 2 results of interest that I've already mentioned, one person had tetrachloroethylene, which is used in dry cleaning, and it's also found in some, you know, household products like wood strippers, things like that, wood finishes, paint strippers, and it shouldn't be in the water. Happily, it was, you know, a pretty low level, but you know, if you don't want that in your water, there would, you know, you could get a certain kind of filter to remove it. You had a question?
Yeah, that tetrachlorine, was that in a location tested near the Superfund site? Because if it is, and that's leaching out, that becomes a serious concern that could be addressed with the EPA.
I'm gonna have to, I don't know where the Superfund site is. It's Site 12. Do you know, Heidi?
It's over in, it's off of 640, so that's over between 15 and Andersonville.
I don't think 12 is over in that part of the county. So just to be clear, we tested 30 sites all along the length of the pipeline, starting from the west to the east, and pretty sure that's not in that part of the county. I have my list over here.
I realize a lot of this information can be kind of overwhelming. So if later you think of questions and you want to pass them on to Heidi, she can get them to me, and I'll do my best to help you with them. But there's just a few last kind of points I want to leave you with. So, I mentioned there's so many things that can be in water, and there are different ways to treat your water. But not every way will solve every problem. So some people will say, oh, well, I have a filter. Well, yeah, but does the filter work on the problem that you have? Like if you have, say, E. coli, and you have a certain kind of filter that may not work for E. coli, it might work for something else that you don't have. So you have to, if you're going to invest in getting some kind of a water filter or other kind of water treatment, you need to make sure it's the right device for the job. So, well, how do you do that? Well, there's an independent group called the National Sanitation Foundation, and they certify units to work, to make sure that they do what they say they'll do. And it's good to get one that's certified by NSF, that's the initials, and you want to make sure it's certified for the thing that you want, not just certified for something. You want to make sure it's certified for what it is that you want. And the Virginia Cooperative Extension has a lot of really good information about all this kind of thing. They have descriptions of the different kind of treatments and what they're good for. I have a few handouts here and links on the handout I did pass out if you want more information. And again, I'm always happy to do whatever I can. That's not my expertise, but happy to help you try to find information if I can. Let's see if there's anything else. And I think everybody got a copy of their water testing report. And it might have been confusing. But if you have any questions about it, please let me know. But again, the bottom line is there were just a few issues that came up in this round of testing. The bacteria, the corrosive water, and just a few small issues for just a few people.
And you said if it was emailed to us, who would it be from?
Analytical,
Pace Analytical Laboratories?
Pace, P-A-C-E?
I'm not sure that's the first, I can find out
Okay.
and I can forward it to you, because they were all sent to Lisa and myself, in addition
Okay,
to.
so they may not have been sent individually to people with email?
Yeah, they sent them to, anyone who had an email, they were sent to,
Okay.
and anyone who didn't have an email, they were mailed to their street address.
Yeah?
When the test showed that there is a problem, were the people notified that they need to do something else to rectify the problem?
No, I don't think so. I think, it was sort of, they got the results and it was up to them to look at the results. And, we didn't actually comb through all these reports until more recently. And I'm sorry about that, because some of those issues with the bacteria are an immediate concern. But if you looked at your reports, you might have seen, like, the words, it would say present after coliform or present after E. coli, which means it's like they either found them or they didn't. It was either absent or present. So that was an easy one. But I don't know if people understood that meant that was a problem.
That's the reason that I say that, I don't know if I would understand it, but I'm just saying that, there should be a notation that says you need to take further steps in this particular area.
Well, the laboratory is just that. They just do the tests, send out the results, and that's kind of where, what this gathering is for, is to discuss what the results were and, explain it. Because the lab doesn't really do that. It's,
Okay.
what they issued, I think Heidi will say, it's a little confusing. So, that's our purpose here today, is for me to try to, make it a little more understandable.
Would you and Heidi alert people that they need to?
Yeah, well, what I can do is, since not everybody is here tonight, is maybe, at least for those on email, send an email out to folks that had a particular issue with their water and let them know what that was, and, I can attach the handout and, which gives some recommendations. And then maybe the people that don't have email, who also aren't here, perhaps we can mail them the information. Yeah, that's a good point. Any other questions? So, anyway, it's really great that you guys have had some very, really comprehensive and rigorous testing, way more comprehensive and rigorous than, probably anybody else in the state of Virginia, maybe. It's really comprehensive, and, if there is a problem down the road with the pipeline, we're gonna be in good shape to say, hey, this is the quality of our water. Now, it's just like with insurance, if you have to file a claim with your insurance company, it's not like it's real easy. Of course, they're gonna hassle you, they want photographs, they want this, they want that. It's not a sure thing, but without this, we wouldn't have any chance, I don't think, of defending quality of our water. So, I think we're in good shape. That's it.
Thank you, Lisa.